Hello out there and welcome to the Revere Veterans Community Show. And today we have two special guests, and they really are special because they do a lot of things for the community. They're community veterans. The first one I'll introduce the lady. Her name is Rebekah Peoples. Welcome, Rebekah, and thank you for coming.
Thank you, Morris.
And of course, many of you people know Paul Buonfiglio for the Buonfiglio Funeral Home. Thank you, Paul, for coming.
Thank you, Morris.
Is it okay if I start with her first?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Rebekah came to my senior center and she was talking about funeral of the families of the deceased. But instead of me telling you about it, I'm going to let Rebekah do it. So please, Rebekah, take it away.
Yeah, that was where I met you, Morris, and that was a pleasure. I was invited to the senior center to talk about things that people can do after someone that they love has died. And a lot of times when someone dies, people find it painful to see some of the person's belongings around the home, and that might be articles of clothing. And so we kind of encourage people. Sometimes people get rid of things a little too soon and then wish that they still had, you know, one of the person's shirts or something that belonged to them. So if that's the case, we encourage people to maybe just put them away or keep them out of sight until you feel like you're ready to see those items. But things that we have found that people can create that then become articles that bring comfort instead of pain are things like a, well, who doesn't like a teddy bear that can be made out of, this one is made out of a pair of pajamas that someone had. But for men, most men have some kind of shirt that you can make a nice soft pillow out of too. But some of the other things that we found were pictures. And they're now finding that pictures, like people bring pictures to the funeral home a lot for services, and now they're discovering that pictures actually emit energy. And that's why we find pictures as something that we like around us all the time. That's why now we even like take pictures with our cameras and things like that. So sometimes people would find that a picture of them might be something that's kind of painful. They remember when this picture was taken. But now with computers, we have capability to do all kinds of cool things. So you can take a picture and make it look like a coloring book page. So a picture that at one time might have been kind of hard for the husband or wife to look at now becomes a source of comfort when they see how the grandchildren did funny things with the pictures. Like this one grandchild was kind of the smart aleck and put earrings on the grandfather. And then in this other case, like put purple hair on the grandmother. So it's about taking items that might have been kind of painful to look at and turning them into items that now are a source of comfort. So that's kind of what it was about. At the end of the presentation that I gave was when I met you and we talked about some of the veterans, and we're really privileged in Revere to have World War II veterans. You introduced me to one gentleman who served not only in World War II but also in the Korean War.
Right, that was Mr. Charles Mackin.
Who was also the poet.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. He
Yeah.
loves to write poems.
Yeah, he read a poem at the dedication of the Women's World War II Monument.
That's right.
Yeah, and that was very nice of you to have him write that.
No,
Yeah.
he came over to me and he said, Morris, I like to write a poem for the Women's Memorial. And he says, I want you to read it. I says, I'll do that for you. But I never had any intentions of reading it myself. So I sat him up in the front, and when we introduced everything, I said I have a poem that was written by a veteran here, but he wanted me to read it, but I called him up and let him read it because he writes the most beautiful poems you ever heard. He's an 88-year and a World War II and Korean veteran. So it was nice to have him up there.
Yeah, that was a nice gesture on your part to have the poet read the poem.
Right. And now I want to get back to this gentleman on my left here, Mr. Paul Buonfiglio. Let me thank you again for coming, taking the time out.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for becoming a dear friend of Rebekah.
We're good friends now.
I want to continue a little bit with the conversation with
Please
Rebekah. Rebekah started with us just a short while ago, and when she had come into the funeral home, she brought a lot of experience with her. She is a licensed funeral director in 5 states. She's worked in major funeral home corporations as well as small family operations. And she brought a lot to us, and she's teaching us quite a bit. And she has become a community liaison for us that has been incredible. She's really enjoying her time in the community, and she's bringing a lot of programs and outreach to the community that aren't directly related to funerals per se. And she's done a great job so far. And
I think she's doing an excellent job.
yeah, she's doing a great job. And I know that a lot of you here in Revere have driven by the funeral home lately and noticed all the flags that are put in front of the funeral home during certain holidays, as well as any time that we have a World War II veteran. We line the funeral home with flags. We have become the flag business here in Revere, and that's also a big part of Rebekah.
Paul, can I just interrupt you for
Sure.
1 minute? Before we talk about the dedication of flags, which happened past us, you told me a story about a soldier that was being buried and born.
Mm-hmm.
And you brought some pictures. Would you tell it to the people out there again? Because to me, it was one of the saddest stories really, that I heard.
Well, let me kind of fill you in on the whole scenario. Buonfiglio Funeral Home has proudly become a provider and a member of Veterans Funeral Care. We're one of only 2 funeral homes in the state that have the honor of being part of Veterans Funeral Care. And Veterans Funeral Care is specially designed to treat and serve veterans and their families during the time of need. And one of the things as being a member of Veterans Funeral Care is you go through extensive training. In fact, this past June, I had to fly down to Clearwater, Florida for a week and go through their training program and learn a lot of different things, from knowing every bit of detail to the benefits that are available to veterans, as well as following a protocol as to the high standards of any Veterans Funeral Care funeral home would have to be a member. And one of the things that we learned and then we brought to the table on our own was when about a year ago we were attending a funeral down at Mass National Cemetery in Bourne, which is a beautiful cemetery for veterans, which I'm sure we'll talk about again in a little bit. As our service was concluding, I happened to notice another hearse come into the cemetery. There was no procession, and the hearse didn't go to a shelter. It was going right down to a location where they remove the casket from the hearse, place it into one of their vehicles, and then goes right to the grave. And it kind of bothered me that there wasn't some type of service done for this veteran. And after having a conversation that day in the office, we decided that we were going to have a new policy at Buonfiglio Funeral Home, and that any veteran who comes to the funeral home, even those who are a little less fortunate, having some problems, whether it be financially or with their family, we will make sure that that veteran is treated with the highest respect, and that every veteran will have full military honors. And we got involved with the program which is called Forgotten Soldiers. And that's a program that was designed for any situation where a veteran may pass away and not have any family members, or for whatever circumstances they're unable to attend the funeral. And what the Forgotten Soldier program does is they locate and contact the local VFWs, American Legion posts, and they rally up the troops to get whoever can to come over that morning and be there for the funeral and the presentation of a flag and full honors for that veteran. And it's a great tribute to veterans, which we're proud to be a part of. And we're proud, very proud of the fact that we had someone in the cemetery, one of the workers at Mass National Cemetery, call us on the phone and tell us how impressed they were to see that we did this, even though there were going to be no one there to see it. Just recently, Rebekah had a veteran who had limited family, one sister who wasn't in the area and because of health could not be there. And she asked specifically, she said, will you make sure that we have full military honors and so on? And Rebekah said, we will. We're going to take pictures and we'll send everything down to you. And actually I have, I did bring actually a photo. I don't know where I should show this.
Show it right up, right there.
If you can see right here, here's the honor guard. Oh yeah, there we go. The honor guard at the casket. Taps is being played. And then the flag was folded.
Yep.
And there was a presentation.
Sad.
Yep.
If people want to contact you, how can they do that if they need that help, Paul? Can you give them your phone number? Or?
Yeah. The funeral home phone, but this is a local cable show, so we will only give the local phone number.
You're wrong on that, Paul. I have to correct you.
I'm
This
sorry.
goes out to YouTube and Facebook, which goes all over the country and all over the world.
Okay.
That's why we're #1 in the Commonwealth.
Okay, well, that's great to hear. Well, our phone number is 781-284-3376. And again, should anyone have a question regarding services for veterans, we would be willing to help them, answer any of their questions for them. You know, we have a program at the funeral home where we will help any veteran who's in need of assistance, and we will do whatever we can to find all the benefits available to them, such as veterans benefits, Social Security benefits, as well as a Veterans Funeral Care Assistance Program that we have access to now that we're a member of Veterans Funeral Care.
Do you work in conjunction with Nick Bull of the Revere Veterans Service?
All the time. Nick is a good friend.
He's also the commissioner, people, in case you don't know.
Yeah, Nick is I'll tell you, I've known Nick for a long time, but I really got to know Nick Bua, the man, this past year when a similar scenario. There was a veteran who he took care of here in Revere and was more than a friend to Nick's, but had no family.
Right, I know who you're talking
Yep.
about.
Well, we won't get into the names,
no,
but
I know who you're talking about.
And Nick was very involved in making sure that this veteran was taken care of with the proper burial, proper services, again, full military honors and so on. And I'll tell you, he's, besides being a hard worker and a great veterans administrator, he's a good man. And that's,
Definitely.
yeah.
And by the way, I kid around with people. I always say he's my adopted son.
Yeah.
He don't like it, but I do.
Yeah, yeah, and he has some great help in that office as well. His assistant, Donna. Yep.
Donna Dreesen,
Yep.
excellent lady.
Yep, she's great. She's great. They work very, very hard.
Right, Donna. By the way, thank you for all the things you do for the veterans, because we don't
Absolutely.
see much of you.
Right, exactly. You know, when getting back to the flags that you see out front, as you know, we just recently had our flag dedication,
Right.
which turned out to be a beautiful day. We had great community involvement from the different VFWs, Beachmont VFW, the Matola Post VFW,
American Legion.
the American Legion, the high school ROTC, the Revere Police Department, the Revere Fire Department,
Soldiers Home.
the Soldiers Home Honor Guard,
You're right.
the Chelsea Soldiers Home, and it was.
Don't forget the guest speaker.
Oh, excuse me. Right, exactly. And Paul Monty. For those of you who don't know Paul Monty, well, he was on your program, wasn't
That's
he?
right.
A few months ago.
Right.
Yep. Paul Monty runs Operation Flags for Veterans, and he was our guest speaker. Paul Monty. We couldn't find a more appropriate person to speak at the event than Paul Monty. When you're thinking about, you know, a flag dedication. First, we were thinking of some generals, or we were looking for Medal of Honor recipients, and then
You got one, the father of a medal.
well, exactly. As you know, his son Jared was
right.
a recipient of the Medal of Honor, and it was a great day. And we're also now in a sense of again being very involved, and a thank you to Paul Monty. On November 9th, we are bringing a busload of volunteers down to Mass National Cemetery to place flags with Paul in his program on the graves of all the veterans. And we still have a few spaces left, so if there's anyone who would like to join us, as a volunteer, we're going to be leaving, I believe, is it 8 a.m.? We'll be leaving at 8 a.m. from the funeral home. We're going to go down to Mass National Cemetery with Paul and other volunteers, and we're going to place flags on the graves, and then we're going to stop for a quick lunch on the way back, and we haven't really figured out if we're going to, depends how long this takes, if it's going to be on the way back or on the way, while we're there, we're going to have some lunch.
Right.
But
before you go on any further, I'm going to tell you one volunteer you don't have to go looking for. You're looking right at him. So put my name down for November the 9th.
November the 9th.
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock at the funeral home. And I have to say, I have to tell one more story.
Please do.
Because this is how community involvement starts to really mushroom and snowball. We had made a few phone calls because we wanted to bring a busload of people down there. I should say Rebekah. And she was, getting a few prices and seeing who was available on that day. And in a phone conversation with this one particular bus company, they gave us a quote, and they told us they did have availability. So Rebekah said, "Okay, great. I'm going to just check with my boss, and I'll get back to you sometime within the next few days." Well, later that day, the owner of the company calls and insists on donating the bus.
Wow.
The two owners of, if you don't mind, could I
go right ahead,
hold this
please.
up?
Paul, please.
The Locomotion of Boston, the two owners of this bus company both have parents who were buried at Mass National Cemetery. And when they heard that we were getting involved with Paul Monty's group and Operation Flag for Veterans, they wanted to be a part of it. And they're donating us a bus for that day to bring down all our volunteers to Mass National Cemetery.
That's nice of them.
It just turned out to be
very
a great,
patriotic of them, too.
It turned out to be a great thing. And Revere is a very patriotic community because I could not believe the comments that we receive about the flags in front of the funeral home.
Are these the flags that go on the grave?
These are actually this is an example of the flag that's placed on every grave down at Mass National Cemetery, and I believe the numbers, it's staggering, the numbers. I believe it's like 50,000
You're right,
flags.
56,000.
56,000 flags are placed. So he needs a lot of help, and Revere is going to be part of that help. We're bringing down at least 60 people with us.
Paul, I got to give my Revere Senior Center credit. I do have to do that if it's okay with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. 2 years ago, Paul Monty came down and he told us that at one time they could not put a flag on Bourne because it wasn't allowed. He didn't like that because his son Jared, who was a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor, is buried there.
Sergeant First Class.
Right, from Afghanistan, I believe.
Correct.
He wanted to put a flag there. So he went to see President Obama. Obama called the head of the Bourne Cemetery, and it was turned over so they could put the flags there. He came to our senior center, and we raised a substantial amount of money. I won't mention the amount, but it was substantial to raise a lot of flags that we donated to him. And because of that, he thanked us. And because him thanking us, I got to know him very well. And because I got to know him very well, when you were up there, we were talking at the diner at the time, and I happened to mention what he did. You got a wonderful, smart secretary there because she picked it right up right away. And the first thing she said to me, "What's his phone number?" And I didn't know whether I should give it out because it was a cell number and he gave it to me. But when she said it was for a dedication to the flags, I gave it to her right away, and the rest is history.
Well, I'm going to tell you. First, let me just correct you.
Please do.
Funeral director.
Funeral.
Yeah.
Sorry, Rebecca, I apologize to you.
Yeah. So, you know, but, you know, that's how it happens. You know, one little relationship leads to another. Rebecca's relationship with you led to her meeting with Paul Monty. Now, I was telling you earlier how Paul Monty, when he returns the phone call and he gets my, you know, the phone answers Buonfiglio Funeral Home, and he's, you know, a little taken back by it. And he's asking me, he says, are you any relation to Buonfiglio Funeral Home in Quincy? So I said, yes, that was my grandfather's brother. That would be an uncle. And he went on to tell me how the Buonfiglio Funeral Home in Quincy served the Monty family for generations. So there was a relationship there within the families, although it be on the other side of the family. You know, it's a small world. It's a very small world.
You mentioned one other thing to me on the show. Your great-great-grandfather, I believe, tell him the year he started.
My great-grandmother and great-grandfather started in 1910 in Schenectady, New York, your home state. My great-grandmother, Louise Ferrone Buonfiglio, was actually a licensed funeral director. She became a licensed funeral director in 1911 from the state of New York. Sometime in the late 20s, they had moved this way towards Revere, and they opened up. At that time, it was in the home.
That's right.
You know, the funeral home was in the home. And then shortly after that, there was a storefront. And they had 9 children. 2 of their sons decided to be funeral directors. My Uncle Vincent, who went to Quincy, and my grandfather, Paul, who stayed here in Revere. And now it's been generation. My brother and I are the 4th generation. And hopefully we have 6 children between the 2 of us. Hopefully there'll be one of them that will bring it to the 5th generation, which is, you know, quite an accomplishment in itself to have a family business go 4 generations. But yeah, so it's been a long time. It's been a long time.
Rebecca, we got about 5 minutes left, so what I would like to do is to give each one of you a couple of minutes to say things that you would like to see, and also you, Paul, the future of the funeral business and the funeral home.
Yeah.
So, Rebecca, you first, please.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
About a month ago, we did an ad in the Revere Journal where we advertised to people that if there was a veteran in their family, we could help them get some things that they may not have gotten. So in the process of that, we talked about like the bronze medallion if you didn't get a veteran's marker. Some people didn't get a veteran's marker for the grave. There's a presidential memorial certificate, and we actually had quite a few people take advantage of the medallions. You can get the bronze medallions. And although we still will do that, for anybody who calls, you don't have to have used our funeral home. Anybody that calls, we will help them do that. But one of the things that I realized the day at the Senior Center I met you was we talked about, we have little booklets for people to tell their stories, have their stories go on. But when I was helping people with some of these veterans things, people were telling me these stories about their fathers, about their husbands. And we all know that these World War II veterans, unfortunately, are leaving us daily.
1,000 a day.
That's astounding. But their stories are going with them. And so we're going to be working with some of the local organizations, including Revere TV, going to talk to them about what we can do to get some of these stories, to talk to the veterans. And I know you've had a lot of them on your show. So in the future, that's something, and like call the funeral home, call Morris, call Revere TV, because we really are open to suggestions about how we can talk to these people and get some of these stories.
Could you give them that number one more time, please, Rebecca,
yeah,
to get a hold of you?
Yep. The number at the funeral home is 781-284-3376.
Okay, Paul.
Okay, so Morris, the question you said you wanted me to address was what I feel the future of the funeral business will be. Well, the funeral business, you know, has changed a lot over the generations. But in this area of the country, the Northeast, we still remain very traditional. And we seem to be behind the rest of the trends in the country. We're a little bit slower when it comes to funerals. Everywhere else, we seem to be the leaders when it comes to technology, education, and so forth. I guess I see the future of the funeral industry changing in a couple of ways. Obviously, I think one of the big changes will be the transition from burial to cremation. That seems to be something that's happening rather quickly over the last 10 years. I think the percentages of cremation in our facility here in Revere was probably maybe 10% if you go back 20 years ago. And today it's probably closer to 35%. And that's the entire state. I think there's many reasons why. I think the economy might be part of it, but I also think it's become a matter of choice for some people. So that's one difference. You know, when I say cremation, many people don't realize that although we're at 35% cremation, most of those services are still traditional. They still have visitation. They still have some type of service with a religion involved, whether it's going to church or having a service in the funeral home. So there's still a tradition. It's just that the final disposition has changed from burial to cremation. That's one area where there's a change. The other area where there's a change is a change that I see coming is that, you know, in Massachusetts, most communities still have 3, 4 funeral homes in every community. I don't see that in the future. I think within the next 10 years, you're going to see a significant decline in funeral homes in the state of Massachusetts. And you may have 1, 2 at the most in each community.
Okay, Paul, with that we got to end the show because we're already out of time. But I want to really thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having us. And we'll see you on November 9th.
Definitely. You already got me downside.
Yes.
Okay. And to the folks out there, first of all, let me say God bless both of you for coming on. God bless the city of Revere, our troops, and the great country, the United States of America. And thank you all for listening. Until the next time, we do have Revere Veteran Community people, and these are 2 of the best you're looking at. And thank you all.
Thank you.
Of course.